Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. I'm here to welcome you into the world of orgasmic living by hosting experts to discuss orgasmic topics such as nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Here, we will offer lifestyle lessons that can help you lead a fulfilling, joyous, and orgasmic lifestyle. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 110 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this first quarter moon episode, we discuss love, relationships, and intimacy. We speak with Angela and James Mitchell from Love Intentionally. I also review Chapter 2 of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. The Chapter 2 is on desire, which is the first step to riches. And the episode ends with a guided meditation with affirmations for healthy communication in relationships. And first of all, let me share with you my own experiences and perspective on love, relationships, intimacy, and communication. The topic of relationships is something that interests me a lot at the moment. It's a topic that I don't think I have mastered. I'm starting to understand it a lot more though. And my understanding of relationships has really evolved over the years. I remember when I first started having relationships in my late teens, early 20s, I used to really fall in love with people. I mean, I just was so passionate. I used to love creating a cocoon of passion, amazing sex, and sometimes toxicity. Sometimes I was in relationships that had very passionate arguments. And then obviously you can imagine the makeup sex was amazing, but I realized towards my late 20s that was quite a toxic dynamic. And it really wasn't sustainable, not especially if I was going to start getting to think about relationships for a future. I never thought of any relationship as having a future or being part of my future life. I just thought I would cross that bridge when I came to it later on in life. And that really never really happened. And I think because of my anger or the way I used to argue, I mean, I never could see where I went wrong, where I was wrong. It was always the other person's fault. And now with time and experience and hindsight, I can see many places or times when I was wrong and I didn't say the right thing or do the right thing, or I could have handled things in a much better way. But I guess it's all part of the learning process. And other times I'm just glad, that certain relationships ended. I do believe that relationships are a mirror of where we are at in life. So I guess over time I've become a lot more calm in terms of my inner world, and then the relationships I attract also tend to have a kind of more calming energy. But what was really interesting about my earlier relationships was that I felt that I felt very vulnerable when I was in a relationship, in a way that felt, that fear of losing the person, losing the relationship, and, sharing all this intimacy. And then this fear, I always felt stronger as a single person. I felt more authentic because I was actually in a manifestation event with a few female friends a couple of years ago, and we were making, what are they called again? Focus wheels, which is something that's inspired by Abraham Hicks. And what you do is you draw two circles, one small circle, and you write an affirmation in it. Then you put a bigger circle around it and you divide that circle into 8 or 12 segments. And in each segment, you write a supporting affirmation to support the main goal. And I did one for relationships actually, and I kind of got what I wanted except for one thing, the one thing. But that's something I'm gonna keep with me till the grave. But I remember when we were all discussing our focus wheels in this event, I said that I would like to be in a relationship where I can be one way with my friends in a certain vibe or mood, or energy, and then that my other half significant other comes in. Well, let's not say other half, because that would mean that I wasn't complete as a person. So let's say my significant other could join the event and I would be the same person after. I think I've been guilty of not feeling entirely comfortable when I'm blending the partner with the friends or with family and things like that. I haven't felt entirely myself. I've always felt a bit on edge, and you want to be with someone who's going to, with whom you can be really yourself. That's the goal, no matter what your quirks are. Someone who's going to accept you in your entirety, and that's something I had as one of my goals back then. But over time, what's interesting is that I have actually lost my fear of conflict and arguments and vulnerability, to the point where the opposite is true. I think vulnerability is something that is a real strength, and to have a relationship where you're not getting into that space of feeling the love is something that can be very, very frustrating. I remember I had a relationship a couple of years ago with an amazing guy. I mean, he is an amazing guy. And I never really, I loved him dearly, but I was never in love with him. There was just always something missing. And for me, so even though I respected him and all of that, I just felt that I felt that I wasn't going to reach completeness in this particular relationship. But on the positive side, he was a very, very calm person, very, very affectionate, very supportive whenever I needed him. And it was it was an amazing, amazing experience. And he was with me through the pandemic, through some of my darkest moments of my life, when I had Bell's palsy, when I was in hospital. He really was my rock. He was my rock in the pandemic as well. So he is still in my heart somewhere. But our relationship was very, very, very calm, because he was a very spiritual person and I was a very spiritual person. Sometimes when we used to have conflicts, we would just, maybe have some distance for a couple of days, but then we'd always come back and just talk about things in a very calm way. And what's been interesting since in my later dalliances or relationships is that I now see conflict as a real opportunity to create deeper connection if you have the right communication frameworks. And something I really love is nonviolent communication. There are 4 stages or steps in nonviolent communication. I think it's something like when I can't remember offhand now, but it's something like when I see this or observe this behavior, I feel this. What I need from you is this. And this is very different from, let's say, accusing someone of something. Let's imagine someone is not pulling their weight in the home with domestic tasks. That can really create a lot of tension. Not for me. I mean, I'm usually the messier one in a couple, but I can understand that for many people that becomes a really, really big issue in a relationship, and it's just it kind of kills the libido as well. But if you kind of frame it in a way like, you didn't take the bins down, you didn't do this, then it's going to be going to feel like you're with your mum or something like that, and that's not sexy at all. But if you say, hey, when I see you don't do this, I feel this. What I need from you is this. It's kind of like an observation, sharing how you feel, and then a request at the end. So it's when you frame things in a different way, that's not accusatory, then there's often room for a different kind of outcome. And I think when you're in a loving relationship, and you know that certain things that you are doing are causing discomfort to the person you love, I think the first instinct or action is to try and comfort that person, not just be in the defensiveness of like, I'm right, I didn't do anything wrong. And maybe that was doing that maybe earlier on in my life. But for me now, I think it's, if you really genuinely love someone, your first instinct is to comfort that person and then know what their triggers are so that you don't do them again. Well, or that you have more awareness about it at least. And something I'd really dream of actually is the power couple dynamic. I've seen several examples of that around me, of, let's say, two people who have their own worlds, their own professions, their own interests, etc. But occasionally they come together, maybe in a professional sense, and there's this synergy that's created. It's like 1 + 1 = 3. And then Napoleon Hill talks about that in his in Think and Grow Rich, in the Mastermind chapter. He talks about it in a professional way, not to do with relationships at all, but there's always, when two minds come together, there is a third entity that is created. And I've seen that with several couples that I've worked with or even interviewed for this podcast. And it seems that, they add something really special occurs when they come together and they host a retreat together. It's not the same as just being two people. It's like this energy that they create together is shared among the group. And that's something that I would love to experience in my life. And I was speaking to a friend about this who had a very long relationship with someone who was a power partner. They used to work a lot together. And now they've broken up and he's with someone new who's just not going to be a power partner at all. But he was just reminiscing about how wonderful that was, how to, bringing out the best in each other and just really encouraging each other and genuinely knowing and what the other person does. Because sometimes we don't fully understand our partner's jobs. We just kind of know their day to day about where they're working and who with, but we don't really understand the tasks at hand. Whereas when you really do and you can understand and give, really good advice and things like that, I think it creates a wonderful dynamic that's quite intellectually stimulating. So that's something I would love. And something I did recently, actually, I have got this list of 20 journaling prompts for subconscious reprogramming. And I've been working through this most mornings, actually, after my reading time with my coffee. And I've been working through the same prompts for different topics. And I've worked on topics such as money and love. And interestingly, I found in many topics that I have the same blocks or same limiting beliefs, no matter what the topic is. But in love, I found that there are two things that I think are holding me back. And one was being a sexual wellness expert. I think often, I just met a guy the other day, actually, and I found him very attractive, and we were talking in this networking event. And then when I tell him what I do, I have this internal kind of dialogue saying, oh, I don't know if he's gonna judge me or think I'm crazy or think I'm promiscuous or a swinger or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just not that at all. I really do believe in monogamy and love and relationships and exclusivity and all of those things. And I would definitely go for kind of meaningful, deep connections. And so I had this kind of inner kind of feeling or limiting belief, thinking that people are going to judge me negatively because of what I'm doing. But I realized that maybe I'm judging them. Maybe that's my own limiting belief. So I do feel sometimes that, working in the field of sexuality can, to some degree, really make it more difficult to meet someone special. But maybe then that's just a perspective thing. So if you think about it the other way, it's good to have a filter to see, who can handle me really, because I don't think I'm how would I say it, easy to handle. I think there's there's a lot to me, and it will take someone who's got strength of character, who's going to be able to handle me in my entirety. But I do want someone who's going to be able to handle me in my entirety. At the same time, I just really thought about some of the people who've been on this podcast who have Instagram accounts, but you never really tell what's going on with Instagram, what you see online. But they really seem to be experiencing the kind of relationship that I would love to experience, which is something that's kind of based on monogamy, something special, and also not being afraid of conflict and having certain communication frameworks to work through any challenges that might arise, and using those opportunities for growth as well. And I think it's also something that I think is important, to have this shared vision of what you want your future to be, what you want your life to be, and being a willingness to actually explore what that means and to make it better. It has to be, I do believe that relationships are probably one of the best opportunities for personal growth, for healing modalities. And I think it might be the best healing modality. I remember seeing a reel on Instagram years ago with someone who talked about all of these different things like meditation, plant medicine, retreats, blah, blah, blah. But a relationship is like, there are always going to be things popping up, all of these triggers, and you can't schedule when they're going to happen. They can happen anytime, and they can really throw you off. You think everything's going really well, and then boom, this person has the power to kind of like really shift your mood. Obviously, you need to have some emotional regulation and know how to handle things and detach, of course. But I think that finding harmony and intimacy is the reward and incentive of wanting to work through things. I think that's super, super important. And going back to my own limiting beliefs, so the first one was just working in the field of sexual wellness. And there is a part of me that does feel afraid of judgment. And that's something that I've started to be a bit more aware of lately. And the second thing is I've always felt like a weirdo. I think I went into detail in the interview with Steve Nobel, who really leverages weirdness, and that's something I admire a lot from him. And that was I can't remember which one, but a couple of episodes back, and he is a meditation guru. I've been listening to him for so many years. I hear his voice every night, every morning. He's a big part of my life. And also he has a book called The Spiritual Entrepreneur, and he really talks about leveraging and your weirdness. And then, once you do that, you will attract the right type of people into your life. So going to talking about my weirdness, I've tried to fit into more, let's say, conventional molds in life, and it hasn't served me well. I've just really felt just always strange, and that I was the problem, not fitting in. But I think it's just about accepting yourself, and there needs to be lots of self-acceptance there. And I do know a lot of inspiring weird couples who definitely show me that it is possible to really honor your weird and meet someone who's going to honor and accept and love that part of you, the things that make you you. And just a very quick story before we get to the interview today. I remember years ago, I used to be really good friends with this guy, and I considered him to be part of my inner circle. I really liked him. And we used to meet every Friday, and we used to have these talks. We used to call them confessions, because he was a former Catholic as well. And we used to, talk about relationships a lot of the time. And at the time, I think I was with a guy who was married, but he had an open marriage. And even though, in theory, I wasn't doing anything wrong because he had this kind of agreement with his wife. It still wasn't good for me, because I still felt like a side chick. He wasn't available to me on a Sunday. I couldn't call him whenever I wanted. It was just a kind of sexual thing and also a friendship thing. But at the time, I think it was because I was afraid of any kind of deeper intimacy. I'm not afraid now, though. But so what was interesting about that is that this guy that I was seeing, he kind of comes from my world as well. We did a lot of media together. So he knew exactly who I was, what I did, and he didn't find it intimidating. On the contrary, he loved what I did. He was so, so, so supportive. And but I just knew, obviously, there was no future, because he was, in a very different situation with someone else. And I was talking to my friend, my former Catholic friend, about this in our confessions coffee time. And then I said, it's difficult for me to actually date someone, because at the time I was kind of like a local celebrity. I was on a local radio station. I used to get recognized on the street a lot. I didn't feel that I could use dating apps. I just felt that I didn't want to be so exposed. And he said to me, well, when you meet people, maybe you shouldn't tell them what you do. And I was like, what? You must be joking. As if I would have some dates, and then on the fourth date say, listen, I've got something to tell you. As if I had something really deep, dark secret. And I'm not a criminal. I don't have anything. I'm not doing anything wrong. So I just thought, wow, if he thinks that how does he see me, this friend of mine? I felt very, very judged. And I said, I disagree with you completely. I think it's just best to be open about who you are from the start. And at the time, I had a friend who was a professional dominatrix who just married a guy who was a professional mentalist. And they both they're full of tattoos. They dress in black leather, black latex, and they just got married with all in black latex. And their wedding cake was like a high heel shoe. And it was like, wow, I just love the fact that they both leveraged and honored their weirdness to the max and found each other. Because if they pretended to be normal, that would never have happened. So I really believe that, stop trying to fit into someone else's category, someone else's mold, because that's not where you're going to really thrive. And I think we can see that with, I've seen that with lots of people on social media, or people who've just had a growth spurt online or in any kind of domain of life. And it always happens after they really get authentic and unapologetic about who they are. So I think that's the way to go in terms of relationships, is to really, really honor who you are, and the right person will come. Yeah, let's hope so. Anyway, so let's get into today's interview with our guests, who have an amazing story, which I find mega inspiring. Are you looking to strengthen your pelvic floor in a fun and engaging way? Introducing PeriFit, the pelvic floor trainer that combines biofeedback with interactive video games. With PeriFit, you can track your progress and improve your pelvic health while playing games with your vagina on your smartphone. It's easy, effective, and more importantly, it's fun. For a limited time, you can get 25% off with the code Venus15 at checkout. Visit perifit.co today and take control of your pelvic health with PeriFit. That's perifit.co, and use the code Venus15 for 25% off. The link is also in the show notes below. Strengthen, play, and thrive with PeriFit. Disclaimer: consult your healthcare provider before starting any new fitness program. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We speak with Angela and James Mitchell from Love Intentionally. Angela and James Mitchell, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, first of all. I've been a counselor for 20 years, working with a variety of people, women, abuse survivors, children, now couples. James?
Been a transformational coach, working through a lot of men's work, a lot of transformational emotional development for men. And naturally that applies into this relationship side of things. And so what we do is we blend coaching and counseling together to work with what we call ride or die couples to experience the most amazing, remarkable lifestyle they can now, full of deep connection and intimacy.
Amazing. So what inspired you to follow this path?
Great question.
This is what we love to do for our own relationship.
Okay, so you're testing it out on yourselves and then kind of applying.
Oh yeah, we are. Yes, we are the lab rats for all things we recommend to other couples. We try it first. We've been together for 15 years. It turns out relationships aren't easy. Whoever said that was a lie. No, I don't know if anyone ever said that, but and so I've been a counselor for years, obviously, and so wanting to just work with people to help them, become their best, fullest potential, right? To find the divine inside themselves, right? And then working together, we've done a lot of work and invested in our relationship a lot, and then found things that have helped us just thrive. And each year of our marriage, I would say, I hope he says the same thing, maybe he doesn't, but seems to get better and better because we've found the tools and and leaned in during the hard parts. And so now it feels like we found all these things that can help, and it's part passion and part almost duty. Like if we have this information and this stuff that can help other people, like I feel a duty to bring it to other people as well. And we love doing it. It's fun work.
So you're both doing your work separately, and then you've just come to join forces, and you're still doing work separately as well?
Somewhat, yeah. Most of what we do is with couples, though.
And the separate part comes in is that there's two people in a couple, and so we'll separate out. And if we work with a couple that is traditional and identifies male, female, whatever we want to say about that, we'll typically find one of those partners is more resonant to each one of us in a different capacity. And so that's where the one-on-one work comes in. Angela actually left all of her other jobs. Well, I can't get rid of the parenting jobs. I can't take that, but she got rid of her other daytime job
to just do primarily
back in May. So full time on this now.
Oh, amazing. So you said earlier about relationships not being easy. I think I'm a victim of all this Insta psychology. You know, and you see all these carousels of about and analyzing relationships and love. And I think there's this perception or maybe a view that everything has to flow when it's the right person. What would you
Mm,
say to that? Because people say that a lot, you know, when it's the right person or the right relationship, that it can all flow. And if it doesn't, if there's resistance, that can how can you
yeah,
find that balance and how can you know like when is it worth working
great.
on?
Yeah, you want me to go first?
You please. Yes.
So well, first I like to think I kind of called James in. I made a list. So I was
Mhm.
very intentional from the beginning. I made a list of 10 things I was looking for in a partner, and the first five were not negotiable. So that did really help me weed through a lot of things quickly. And because sometimes you got like good chemistry with someone and you're like, oh, maybe, but then it's like, they really don't have this non-negotiable. They don't want to have children and I do, or
Mhm.
they're not, whatever, they're not secure. And I felt like that was an important quality in someone because it solved a lot of other issues if they were secure in themselves. Anyway, so I had my list and that helped, I think, to be intentional.
Is that
And
when you were dating? You had the list when you were
yes,
dating.
yes, when
Okay.
I was dating, yes. And so I think there is some to like really getting clear on what you want. And then that clarity can help things be easier in the beginning. Right. So I would say the beginning of our relationship wasn't necessarily difficult.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't classify our relationship as difficult now. However, it does take effort, right? It does take work. Just like, if you want to be healthy, right, you probably need to put in some exercise. You probably need to choose some healthy foods, right? There's things you need to do on a daily basis that is going to keep your body healthy. And I think the same thing for a relationship. And then also life happens,
Mhm.
right? So you can be a super solid couple and then life throws something at you and that can put stress and strain on a relationship. What would you say?
That initial connection, I really feel like deserves to be easy,
Mm.
just to show that we can have that, right? The attraction, the connection, just all that new energy, right? We all know what that looks like. And then that turns into love and we're moving towards our goals. And we can get into this idea of creation intimacy, which I hope we'll double click on a little bit later. And that first year of marriage really, I believe, has the ability to be one of the easiest years. This idea that it's the first year is the hardest, man. And what we've noticed is what happens over time. We tend, Dr. Terry Real, he may or may not actually be a doctor, but he is a relationship coach, therapist, and he says we marry our unfinished business. And so at some point if we're going to be in this thing for life, no matter how easy and smooth the connection is, at some point we begin to mirror each other's unfinished business and the work that is being invited for us to do to continue to maintain that initial ease of connection.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I think like that initial bit is like you're kind of establishing the reward and incentive, you know, for actually working on it. Would you say that's true?
I love that. Yes, I
Mhm.
love that look on it. I think that's,
Oh,
yeah,
well,
Mm.
beautiful.
we're gonna use that one. Thanks a lot, B.
Quote me on that. I guess that's
Yeah.
something I should think about a lot. But I was actually speaking to some friends who were really in the kind of divine feminine space and a bit princessy vibes, and we were talking about, you know, the list. This is why what you
Yeah.
mentioned, the list. And sometimes I wonder what's more important, like having a list and knowing what you want, or falling in love with a person. Because I think for me, I've not been intentional enough, and I'm paying the price kind of thing in my life. But then I know some friends who have this list and they know what they want. And then when they see the partners falling short, that's going to be the end of the relationship. Whereas I think I've fallen in love with people really and not really had a list. What would you say to that? Like, how important is the mold and versus the person, you know?
Yeah.
I did hear you say you're maybe paying the price for not
Yeah,
having.
well, there you go.
So, like, I mean, I'll answer your question if you want, but it feels like you might have answered it yourself.
I'll have to hire you.
Yeah, and I think my list, for instance, had 10 things and only five of them were non-negotiable, right?
Okay.
And because those would have felt like things I was settling or compromising my values
Mhm.
for, right? And then the other five were like the cherry on top, the icing on the cake, right? It'd be really
Mhm.
great too if they had these things,
Okay.
right? So I think there's some room for flexibility. I think anytime we get too strict or stringent on things,
But that clarity also makes sure you get what you want,
mhm.
Mm.
right? The universe in all of her glory is going to give you like little bits of opportunity to say, oh, never mind, I didn't really mean that, right? It's going to give you breadcrumbs when you really want the full loaf of bread. You're like, hey, I really want, we're meat eaters, right? So I really want a steak and Brussels sprout dinner, right? And I'm starving, okay? And we're trying to get to this dinner, get home so I can cook it. And then I drive by McDonald's. Oh, there's food. I'm starving. You know, universe is going, you're hungry. Do you want food or did you really want that steak and Brussels sprouts? Right. And so that intentionality can make sure that we don't stop short on the way to what we truly want.
Yeah, because it's funny to talk about food because I'm a vegan and I always thought that it would be too difficult. If that was part of my top five, that would be impossible because you're really, reducing the pool of opportunities there. So I started my own vegan community in Barcelona. I've got 3,400 members. And I've been out with a couple of vegans and just the actual experience was just amazing to go to a restaurant and realize that they weren't making a sacrifice. So I've always felt that with meat eating partners in the past, that they were wanting to get chicken on the way home or something like that,
Yeah.
Whereas it was a full culinary experience going out with a vegan. And I started to think maybe I should have that in my list now. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely would make cooking at home a little easier if you
Yeah, and exactly, I just couldn't deal with meat in the fridge. Like just like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And if you ever have a partner who's into leather, like you won't have to talk about getting like the cactus made instead of the cow made. Like you're going to be on the same page with all these things.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. So how do you find working together? Because I find a lot of couples work together, and then I know a couple who do lots of retreats and stuff, and they have a rule where they don't speak about work after 8 o'clock or something. Do you find that there's a blurry line between work and life because your work is based on your life? Do you find that?
Yeah, I think generally how we've approached that. So we have a weekly meeting as a couple, which we
Hmm.
do on Sundays, which is about life. And every now and then, like we're tempted to talk about work stuff at our family, our relationship meeting.
Creeped
And
up.
yeah, it creeps in. And usually me is the one who's going, we got to wait, save that tomorrow for the business meeting, right? So then we have our business meeting on Monday mornings where we talk about the
Okay.
business. So we have some structures in place where we try to separate that out. I think we did a mostly good job about it.
Yeah. When we got to Peru, I remember having a moment of overwhelm slash frustration slash probably just a temper tantrum, just having a little tantrum about this lack of separation and just like, I need more separation. And that helped us because it was really fun and exciting at first. And we love the work we do. We love the people. We work in love, right? We work in sex, intimacy, and love. Like what greater topic, And so that was fun for a while. And then we realized that separation is important. And it helps us to enjoy working together more. We rock at managing a household, a life, 3 kids, and that aspect together. And we've had the opportunity to learn and work really hard at being at a point where we not just can work together, but actually enjoy it and want to. And I'd say we've tipped the scales to like mostly that way now.
Yeah, but it does. You're right. It takes effort to separate it. And usually one of us going, oops, like we're slipping into talking about business during family time. Let's back that up. And oftentimes, like James said, it's something we're excited about when it does come up. But still we're like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's talk about that on Monday.
Okay. And so can you tell us any of the modalities that you've created together that you can share with our audience about fashion or just tips in general?
Sure. So we really work kind of, our model is kind of having this 2 prongs to a really successful, epic life and relationship. And we see that as part, kind of this strategic planning, this coming up with, we call it the relationship North Star, right? What is this life and relationship, this vision you have that you want to create? And the 2 prongs are that, and then this intimacy and connection. Okay. So the relationship North Star, the strategic planning. James has a background of being an entrepreneur. He's been an
Would that be
entrepreneur.
what was that referred to like your life, how your life is set out or your family?
All of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like family planning. So in that section, it's how are we doing with our kids? What do we want to happen with them? Are they doing sports? How are they doing emotionally? Like what's necessary there? Financial planning, right? So if there's any debt reduction to moving into like what's our 1, 3, and 5 year plan. Travel, right? Even that, like what are our plans this year? And we have a lot of people and family that love us, and so when are we going to go visit them? When are we going to do our own stuff? That's And then also like getting to the point where we're, at the financial wealth that we want, right? And being able to contribute and give back, right? That's the idea. And so to build that leg of this, that whole thing is the strategic plan. That's like when we call each other a partner, right? And I'm not a huge proponent of calling my spouse a partner, but if I am, it's because we are partners in this business of our marriage. We are bringing in money like a business, and we are investing it and spending it like a business. So how is that coming together?
And also where we put our time, right? What are our priorities? What is this life we're wanting to create together?
Yeah. The house, right? The dream house. The second component is what makes it all worth it, though, Venus. Like the second side is, oh, we're connected. We have intimacy, and we can build this beautiful life together that, one, we're going to actually enjoy when we get there. And two, we're not going to have to give it all away at some point because we decided that you weren't the right person because I wasn't willing to work on myself, or vice versa. When things got hard, managing the tension of, call it an empire of whatever size you choose.
Yeah. So those are kind of the two prongs we work in, is this, what's our relationship North Star, and how are we getting there, creating this life of our dreams? And then potentially more importantly, how are we staying connected and on the same team and having deep intimacy together, so that, like you said, so all of that other side is worth it, right? And even some of that strategic planning side is, helping couples get their life in order in a way that it allows the space for connection and intimacy, right?
Cool. Yeah, something I've learned quite recently is how conflict, it can be such an incredible thing, like with non-violent communication, like just getting to the depth of why someone has a reaction or has a certain trigger, and how that can really, make create more vulnerability, more connection. And I was talking to a couple of friends like this, and they're like, how can you not get angry? And I'm not someone who gets angry in my most recent relationships. I'm kind of excited about like what can we learn from this, that kind of thing. Do you have any tips about conflict and how to handle it?
Sure.
Absolutely. I'm probably, and by probably I mean definitely, the one that creates a little bit more conflict in our relationship. I have a tendency to get overwhelmed, frustrated. I have a tendency to get frustrated. And then it just kind of like, I'm having conflict with this other thing, this person on the phone is trying to fix my, technology. And then like the conflict, just that energy spills over onto Angela.
Oh, okay.
And so, which terribly, terribly affects our intimacy and connection. Right. And that's the most important thing to me, is to get to experience all types of intimacy, and connection. And then when that conflict comes up, it gets in the way until, thank you to Sharon, our counselor, big plug for our counselor who helps us really dive into the bottoms and the depths of these things, is the what's underneath it. Like, where's this thing come from? And for us, it's very important to have a third party walking us through that process, because I can't do that for Angela, and she cannot do that for me.
That's a really great big tip then. So every couple, even yourselves, need another pair of eyes or someone to guide you.
Yeah, that idea, you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle, right? Sometimes you need someone on the outside going, oh, right. We had to that point, we had a couple we were working with. And so we help couples like, what is the layer deeper? Because usually the surface level conflict is not really what we're about. Something underneath. And we had a couple, they were arguing a lot over the mother was living with them. She was elderly, living with them. And the wife was having a lot of trouble and conflict, and was creating conflict in the marriage about the mother-in-law living with them. And when we dug in and went that layer deeper, the wife felt like she had a limited time with her husband. They were aging as well. They were now getting towards retirement age, and she was feeling like they weren't able to travel and have the quality time together as a couple that she was expecting because of the mother-in-law living with them. And when the husband was able to see, oh, it's actually because she wants to spend time with me because she loves me, right? He had a lot more compassion for why she was frustrated about the mother living with them, right? So oftentimes when we go that layer deeper and we get at what's the hurt, what's the fear that's underlying it, we found it can really then build compassion for your your loved one, you know, your beloved, that, oh, this is coming from this place of usually love or fear. So
Illuminating,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah.
Wow.
I'd say other thing for conflict would be we have a similar to nonviolent communication model that we use a lot. And it's, you know, I noticed, uh,
Okay.
and then we do the story in my head is.
Are you familiar with that
Uh,
one?
no, but I know the non-violent. I know the fact or
Yes.
the observation and the
Yeah.
feeling. I know that's the
Yep.
four stages of non.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do in ours, which is, you know, it's similar to nonviolent, but we do, I noticed, and then the
Uh,
story in my head is, and that one
okay.
to me is
Uh,
so important because, right, it's
mm,
acknowledging that you did this thing and I created a story about it that may
yeah.
or may not even be accurate, but it's from my perspective, right? And if I share that with him, it gives him a chance to then like you know, acknowledge and go, oh, that's what was going on. And here's what I meant by that, right? Or here was what was going on my side of it. So we get better understanding. And then I feel, right? So I
Mm,
notice in my head is I feel, and then next time and making the request of what
mm.
I would like to happen differently. What we often found is what your partner is requesting is often more doable than what you had in your own head.
Oh, okay. That's
About
interesting.
yeah, it's like, you know, I was upset because he was getting home late from work and dinner was on the table and he hadn't communicated, right? And I'm not asking him to be home every night on time because I know with his previous line of work that was difficult. All I was asking for was a text.
Mm,
And he was like, "Oh, that's all you want is a text to say I'm going to be late?" Yeah, I can do that, right? And
yeah.
so the request was clear
Because
Mm.
without that, you would feel how?
without
With if I wouldn't text you, how would you feel?
unimportant,
Mm.
unvalued, not respected,
And
right?
I'm out there hustling, trying to make the money and feed the family, and then like I'm getting hit back with now I'm being disrespectful. So that
Mm.
causes a lot of continued conflict if we don't get to what's underneath it. And
Mm.
at the core, what's underneath it is people wanting to be seen and people
Mm.
wanting to be heard.
And just connect as well. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And once, and you know, it can be challenging for me to hear those requests because I get
Mm.
defensive, like I'm,
Mm.
you know, out there like blah blah blahing or whatever. And so that's just to remember that a remembrance always that we're really working on the same team towards the same goal. And
Mm.
as long as we can take that time to slow down and really connect and see her and feel her on that without taking it personally, without making it about me. She's the one who feels disrespected. And if I
Mm.
make it about me, then all of a sudden our conflict is going to extend further and further.
Mm.
So to continue to let it be about her heart or whenever I'm the one in conflict about my heart, and that helps us get through fast.
Amazing. Let's talk about intimacy then, the amazing incentive and reward of all this hard work. Do you have any tips for busy parents who are, I mean,
We do.
How much time? No.
yeah.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, we have three children, and so we know firsthand how
Mm.
parenting, as much as we love and chose it, and are thrilled that we did, can take a toll on your
Mm.
intimacy, right? I know for a lot of women out there, if you were the one that was carrying, you know, if you carried your child, if you were pregnant, you know, birthed your child, breastfed, all of those things, your body can just feel like not your own and exhausted from touch, right? Like kind of this
Mm.
touched out feeling,
Mm.
and which can really take a toll on intimacy and especially sexual and physical intimacy. And so what we really work with, and even just time, people, you know, your kids take it a lot of time and then you're tired at the end of the day, is really identifying the different types of intimacy.
Mm.
Call me your intimacy styles. We have
Mm.
7 that we really work with.
That you
Yep.
came up with yourself? Are they your own styles
Yeah,
or?
I mean, if you
They're the 7 that we feel really encompass the vast majority of how people connect in their intimacy. And so like physical, sexual, emotional,
Mm.
spiritual, intellectual, experiential, right? So we did
Okay.
not come up with names, but those are the 6 that we feel really encompass vast majority. And then when you do all of those right, there's a 7th one called creation intimacy. And that's when
Mm.
we're really creating this life together and we're seeing the
Mm.
success and we have the goals and we're reaching them. And that one we kind of did come up on our own. So I do like that one.
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, so we really work on what, you know, acknowledging that there's all these different types, right? Back in the day, don't pick on James for a minute. He thought there was one type of intimacy. You
Right.
can probably guess which one that was. His favorite type, sex. And really recognizing that there's all these different types of intimacy, and helping people identify what is their intimacy style. Similar to a love language or an erotic blueprint or those kind of things. What is my intimacy style? What are the couple that really fill my bucket and help me feel connected? And recognizing that there might be periods of time where some of those intimacy styles might not be available, right? I just had a baby and I can't have sex for 6 weeks, said the doctor, right? So what other
It's more like
intimacy?
6 months.
Yeah,
What are
sounds like
the other intimacy styles available? What are the ways we can stay connected when some of them aren't available?
Mhm. Yeah.
Definitely.
I used to really feel like I was going for sexual intimacy all the time because that was the only way I would feel that emotional connectedness and even the physical intimacy. And now, after kids and learning about these different styles, it's clear to me that I don't always want sex as my form of intimacy. I do want intimacy, and I'll even feel myself like, oh, I want intimacy. Like, let's go bid for sex. I'm like, fuck, man, I'm tired.
Yeah.
That's actually not what I want at all. I really just want to connect. I want to snuggle on the couch or in bed, whatever that is. And so just giving yourselves permission as new parents, especially or parents in a busy phase of life, to explore other types of intimacy and to let those be enough.
So
Couple more. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. Oh, actually, yeah.
Oh, yeah. A couple more things I think too helpful for parents is we are strong proponents of early bedtimes for young children.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
This is a good practical tip.
Yeah, this is a good practical one. One of my counseling careers, one of my roles as a counselor was I was a school counselor. So developmentally, young children need lots of sleep in the first place. But having that early bedtime, 7:30, whatever it might be, allowed us then also when our kids were young to have time then to connect either with ourselves or each other after we put the kids to bed, right? It was our time to rejuvenate. So maybe we put the kids to bed, I go take a bath, and then we're able to connect on the couch, right? And so that huge proponent of that.
Can you add something about putting the kids early to bed? You're talking about putting the kids early to bed and then connecting.
Yeah, so I think early bedtime for kids is a huge, it's good for the kids, good for the parents, good for the self. And it was that time for us when our kids were young that we could then connect after the kids went to bed. Another big intimacy tip we use especially for parents or people in busy phases of their life is scheduling intimacy.
Oh, that's going to be my next question. Great.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, people always say, oh, well, scheduling sex isn't that, not sexy. And we always say, well, what's less sexy is not having sex. So
Okay.
yeah, so we are big proponents of scheduling whatever type of intimacy, whether it is sex or just some quality time together, and putting it in the calendar and holding it sacred, really valuing that time as a way to connect.
And for couples out there who feel like they're in a really busy phase of life, we have a resource, just a checklist for how to get busy when you're too busy. So Sex for Busy Couples. And it's just permission to schedule it, dial in one evening, and then just use somebody else's checklist, right? Because it matters who says it, right? And so
Sorry, it just
I felt like I wasn't getting enough set to do it again. Yeah.
Let me open the door.
the microphone. So let's start again with the scheduling. So you were recommending it to some people?
Yeah, anybody who's in a phase of life that's
Oh,
too
busy
busy to have
couples.
sex.
That was it. The busy couples.
Busy couples.
Checklist. So do you think like just scheduling maybe just connection time and then seeing what happens? Because sometimes you can feel a bit maybe pressured to have sex. You might not feel like it. I mean,
Pressure is the biggest turnoff, right?
yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
and I think that's why people are adverse to scheduling it, is because what if I don't feel like it? When most of us, especially the older we get, like the less and less we get that spontaneous desire. It's usually very responsive, right? We want to build that desire, like stoking a fire, crock pot, that kind of an energy. And so I've got some clients and friends. What we do is, they just schedule intimacy time, and we're just going to lay in bed, and we might get naked, we might not, but we're just going to get here and we're going to just drop in and see where this goes. And so removing that pressure can help out quite a bit.
Other thing we'll do too is we'll say, you know, okay, it looks like Wednesday is a good night for us based on the schedule, and our backup is Thursday night or Friday night, right? So if we get to Wednesday, it's like, I've got a headache, I'm tired. Can we do this Friday instead? Right. So sometimes we'll give flexibility that way because you want to understand that life happens, right? And illness happens and busy days happen and all those kind of things. So sometimes we'll pick 2 days, you know, during the week that we think are going to be a good time to connect. And then, like we said, we can also, there's no pressure to connect in a certain way. It's just we want to connect. We want to carve out time for each other. Which type of intimacy is available now that we're here, right?
So your clients, would you say they were people who are, let's say, having troubles, or they just want to improve? What would you say would be the general profile of your clients?
Yeah. We love working with couples that are doing great, doing good, and just want to get to that next level, right? Want to level.
We work with couples that are going to be married for life. They are all in, ride or dies. Now, that doesn't mean they're perfect, right? But what it means is that they are going to show up for themselves. They're going to show up for each other. And they know that there's this beautiful, greater connection that's available and a greater dream for their life that they can achieve if only they just get a little bit of that oomph, right? That person or those people who are going to hold them accountable to their greatness, right? So the people we work with, they're showing up really good and they're doing the best they can with what they've got. And they just want somebody to hold them accountable to that greatness that's inside.
Have you got any amazing transformation stories you can share?
Oh, yeah. So, Megan, yeah. So one of our, she posts a lot about us online, so I
Okay.
feel like I have permission to share. But we have a couple we worked with for actually a couple years. Their inspiring story of they separated actually for 6 months and then decided to make it work, decided to get back together. And so they came to us when they had fairly recently gotten back together and said, yep, we're in this, we're going to make it work. And they obviously had a lot of love for each other. And yeah, and really where they needed some help was in the intimacy department with that connection with their physical and sexual intimacy.
And specifically the scar tissue and the hurt that had been caused through financial mistrust.
Oh, wow.
In previous years.
Yeah.
So financial mistrust was what was in the way of their intimacy. And not just like the one not trusting the other, but also somebody feeling guilt and shame and unworthiness. And so really helping to transform that into like, I am an amazing partner and I deserve all of this. And so do they.
Yeah. So we worked on getting some of the obstacles out of the way, healing some of the past hurts that were standing in the way of their intimacy. And they also wanted to start a family. And when you're not connecting, at least sexually, it's very hard to start a family.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
the success story is they now have 9-month-old twins.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and she somewhat jokingly, somewhat seriously is like, says we're the reason they have twins, which they obviously did all the hard work there. But it was lovely to help them and to see them now be at a place of getting everything they really hoped and dreamed for. So.
And what intimacy coaching gets to do is to transform holistically every aspect of the relationship. Because when we come in and get to permission and consent to work on your connection and intimacy, it brings up everything that's getting in the way, right? We could have better sex, or we could have better emotional intimacy if they were home at 5:59 or texting me, right?
Or my mother-in-law wasn't living with us, or whatever it is, right?
Or if we could get heal of the financial wounds that have happened in the past. And so it's just, there's every transformation is slightly different, and it always ends the same, which is better connection, more intentional intimacy, and helping everything else to feel worth it.
You've had a couple that you've thought this is a lost cause, and then they've surprised you.
Lost cause and they surprised us.
In a positive way.
In
a positive way. You thought, oh my God, why are these people together? And then they're like, wow, actually, that must be really.
We don't typically get a lot of that. We did have one couple come to a retreat that kind of snuck through the door, really represented, said the right things, and they just weren't all in as they said. And it's still a privilege to get to help them. we've helped some couples in their relationship a little faster because they step into our container and they realize that this isn't the right container. And if this isn't the right container and that's not where we want to go, then what are we doing here?
Mm.
And I would say some of the surprises more have been not necessarily that we were surprised they stayed together, but we've had a few couples that have worked with us that have been older and been together for 40 years. And one of our clients, he says they're having the best sex of their life now after being
Wow.
married 40 years. And so some of that, it can be somewhat of a surprise, like,
Mm.
oh, like these couples have been together a long time and we still have, I love to see that these tools can still work for them as well,
Absolutely.
right? I don't know how long they've been together, and you can found new levels and depth of intimacy and connection after decades together, and that's beautiful. And I love to see that. So
It's very inspiring, yeah. So how do you work then? You work with couples together and then do one-on-ones with the couple separately? How do you
We
work?
do 2-on-2 tandem couples coaching, right? And so
Okay.
the vast majority of our work is the two of us and the two of you doing live Zoom calls.
Okay.
Now, based off of what we're doing,
Mm.
I will do a lot of times, pretty much every situation, I'm going to do a break off with the men. We're going to do one-on-one
Yeah.
men. We're going to do one-on-one women's. So we can really install some programming that allows us to do that couples work a little together.
and
Okay.
if it's a same gender couple, we, are more like, okay, which one are you resonating with more? Usually there's one partner that resonates more with me and one with James. We found that's pretty typical. And so we might break off in ways that just make sense, and so that we can work on stuff sometimes without the partner present.
Mm.
Sometimes it can be easier to really dive into the nitty-gritty, and then we
Mm.
get to bring that kind of better version of ourselves back to our partner.
And what about your retreats then? Are it several couples or just one couple? How does it work?
Several, yeah. We usually
They're
do
intimate, small,
five,
five
six
couples.
couples, something like that. Keeps it intimate. Retreats are really fun because one of the things that the feedback we get from couples that come is they love, we do some work off separately, and the individual couples kind of break off and we go around to support them in their individual work. And then we come back together as a group to debrief. And most couples say that is their favorite part of the retreat, is getting to interact with the other couples and see what they're going through and get advice. Couples to couple will give advice, or, oh, when our kids were young, this is something we tried, or when
Okay.
my mother-in-law was this is what we tried, right? And so that is a beautiful, there's kind of a mastermind that's created when you have a group of couples that are together, that are all being intentional, that are all really wanting to thrive in their relationship. It's special.
Mm. Amazing. So I watched this amazing series on HBO called Tell Me You Love Me. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God. It
Check it
was
out.
so good. It was actually a therapist, this older woman. She's probably about in her 80s now. I think it was like 2007 this was actually filmed. And she was seeing three different couples who were very different. And it was kind of known for the very explicit sex scenes, but when you watch it, you realize that the emotional implications of sex. For example, there was one couple who hadn't had sex for a year, and even though they're in the same bed, it's just like there's this wall. Like, why can't we just touch each other? It was just this invisible wall was there. And there was another couple who was trying for a baby, and that's obviously one of the least sexiest things ever. All this pressure, like, and all these tests, and and it was just like very unsexy. And I think that's what I admire about that is the couples they're all in, but they're really suffering every month with the period. And then there's another couple who was a young couple who broke up, and the woman was like using sex to get attention or affection. So it was like the therapist seeing all these couples, and even though it can be seduced by all the naked skin and all the intimacy that's not typical in your average American soap opera, it was just wow, the emotional implication of each couple was huge. I mean, how would you? I'm sure you've had couples who have had sexless marriages, and that's a very common problem. What advice would you give, or what have you given in the past?
Well, sex for me and for these types of couples, I think is one of the greatest sources of pain and
Mm,
pleasure in their
mm,
entire life.
mm,
So coming across folks that have had such a disconnect and it's just
mm,
feeling awkward and they don't know how to come close together again, I think you can warm up to that intimacy,
mm,
right? So it's, well, what kind of, if you're still together after not having sexual intimacy for a year, there's some type of intimacy that is working.
mm,
So what is working? right?
Mm.
And how can we lean into that and work on growing that? Because where attention goes, energy flows.
Mm.
So I think starting slow, it is important to move at the pace of the slowest nervous system.
Mm.
In that case, it might be hard to figure out who's the slower, but to really take your time. And I think to also, again, it matters who says it, right? And so to have somebody who's going to help you break through that ice, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, yeah, to your point, we look at, what other intimacy styles and buckets can we fill? Because we feel like when you start filling up some, it tends to raise the other ones, right? So if we're having a lot of emotional intimacy, then, it can spill over to like more physical touch, more hand holding, right? That kind of stuff. So, filling all the intimacy buckets, I think, can then help in the sexual intimacy area. And then, yeah, just those strategic exercises to help, we might start with just a non-sexual, but you're going to rub each other's shoulders for 5 minutes each, right? Like, how do we just break the crunchiness of touching each other again?
Yeah.
And like you said, when my partner's saying, I want sex and we're not having it, it can feel like pressure and shut me down, right? If I have a relationship coach that's saying, hey, you're just going to give each other 5-minute shoulder massages, it's like, okay, we can do that. It's different than when it's from your partner and it can feel like all these other implications are being made.
Have you heard of the 3-minute game by Dr.
No,
Ed
it
McGraw?
sounds interesting.
Great.
3-minute game. Is that yours or
Don't
is
get
that just
fooled.
exists? Is it, did you make it up or is it like a,
No,
Dr.
nope.
Betty
Betty
okay.
Martin
Betty
made it
Martin.
up.
Okay.
Yep. Google it. She's got a YouTube video on it and everything.
Absolutely. And what it does is it's called the 3-minute game. Don't be fooled. It's 12.
Okay.
But there's the 4 quadrants of consent,
Mm.
giving and receiving,
Mm.
taking and allowing.
Ah.
Okay. The taking is if I'm touching Angela how I want to touch her, and she's letting me, right? Versus
Okay.
giving,
Consensually.
yeah,
Yeah.
consensually, right? It's a game of consent, right? And
Mm.
so in this case, it's like, let's just get used to touching each other. Let's get used to asking for what we want. I want you to scratch my back. I want you to rub my shoulders. I want you to rub my right foot, right? And so when we can start to get that communication going, plus the what do I actually desire, and then give them a structure and a safety net of a timer.
Okay.
This is your job for 3 minutes, just receive. Okay. You don't have to think about what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
We'll get to that after the timer goes off. But while the timer's on, this is your safe place, just being in receipt or being in the giving mode if that's where you're at. That can really help just get past that it's an energetic feel. Like there's just a palpable energy that's like, I don't feel safe to touch you. I don't feel allowed to touch you. Right. I don't feel comfortable. So this can bring that back.
So I've been in a relationship where I was the one wanting more, and I was also in a relationship where I was the one avoiding it. So I've been on both sides, and it's really awful. Like the rejection you feel, like from when your partner doesn't desire you. That's just awful. You feel awful, and that means you don't feel comfortable being naked in front of them, and it just implicates a lot of areas of your relationship. And also the other side where it was me, I didn't want it as much. When I'm a sex toy reviewer, imagine like it was like, how can I be a sexpert and not really? I'm avoiding sex with my partner. It was very difficult. I felt like every touch, every massage was just had some kind of ulterior motive, and that was a real turn off. I think that's the problem with these things. Even if it's just like, oh, you want a massage? Yeah, I want a massage, but then he just wants sex.
Yep.
Was,
Yeah. And we put specific boundaries. Like when we have couples first start the 3-minute game, we tell them to start at the PG level.
Okay.
Clothes are on. There's no expectation of this leading anywhere, right? And then we work up to the R or the X or the triple X, wherever you're at on that rating scale. But yeah, and we believe it's important to set boundaries on and have those conversations. Like, is this just a massage or is this leading somewhere? And what are we open to? Because yeah, like it's going to be hard to enjoy the massage if that's all I want it to be. And I'm worried that he's thinking it's going to turn into something more, right? I can't even enjoy my massage now because I'm like, is he thinking this is going somewhere? I'm not really up for sex tonight, right? So that open communication and setting those rules of the game up front can really relieve a lot of that pressure.
Yeah. What it feels like a whole lot of this amazing conversation is about the sexual development, right? And not personal development, not couples development. We can do couples development and personal development, but when we come together in our sexual development as a couple, that's where the magic of growth and healing can happen the most. Right? right? And it gives us permission to connect with each other on new deep levels with vulnerability, right? And the sexual development and the work and healing we do today, it's not necessarily going to, it doesn't last a lifetime. We're going to get to do it again in a few years or a few months or whenever something else comes up. Because if I'm avoiding sex or if I'm always using a massage to initiate it, it's giving us a clue as to what's happening inside my own body, what's happening inside my own emotions, right? And how's that coming out, and how is sex the mirror, or at least the illuminating where the next round of energy gets to go.
Yeah, and I think to, his point about, I don't think it's that sex is the most important type of intimacy. Like for me, it's emotional is mine, right? But I think to James' point is that there is so much tied up in sex, right? In our culture, and it requires a great deal of vulnerability. It requires, to do it well.
Self-esteem.
Right. Yeah. And so really when we start working in that area, it brings up where are the weaknesses, where are the pain points, where is the vulnerability, where is the pain, right? And the idea of end up marrying our unfinished business, I think is also beautiful, because when our partner triggers those things in us, it also allows us then to heal them, right? And so it's that beautiful piece of where most of our wounding is relational, and now we get to heal it relationally. And sex can be that, point where it just brings up a lot. And so couples are able to actually work through some of these other things in order to get this amazing, epic sexual intimacy.
One thing that people have come to me with a lot over the years is, how do I tell my partner about my secret fetish? Having these secret desires or fetishes that might not be your normal or standard conventional practices, and they feel that they can't come out as a foot fetishist or something. Do you have any tips about that, about someone who's got a certain desire that maybe their partner might not be into, and they want to stay monogamous? I mean, do you have any tips about that?
We've found a few of these. We call them won'ts. These are the won'ts.
Okay. Yeah.
There's one of our mentors in this department, Alexa Bowditch, at That Sex Chick. She had a want, will, and a won't list. So these are
Okay.
all the things I want. And so these are all the things I want to do as a giver
Yeah.
or a receiver. These are all the things I will do if you
Mm.
want it. These are things I
Mm.
won't do.
Okay.
It's a
That's a
checklist.
great list. That's a great
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
It's super helpful. Woman named Kimmy Inch. She is a somatic therapist / conscious kink dominatrix. She has
Okay.
a kink checklist. And
Mm.
what these checklists do is the first time I gave Angela that list, I was super nervous. Like you, I'm like, I've got these things, and what is she gonna do? Is she gonna reject me? Am I gonna be embarrassed? Should I be shame? And what it did was, even though they weren't all wants or wills for her, I at least got to show myself. And I didn't have to come out and say it. Like I wasn't like,
Mm.
hey, this is something I want to do. I just checked a box that yes, I would
Mm.
be into that. And then we got to talk about it.
Mm.
And I think the important thing for me when I have these types of fetishes and kinks, I just want to be seen. I want to be heard.
Mm.
Right. She might go, oh, that's okay. Great. Thank you for sharing that with me. Like, what would that look like? Right.
Mm.
Or she's like, that's a won't for me right now, but like, I'm really glad you shared that. And what I notice is that even if I can't do the thing that I shared, because I've now shared it and I've told her about it, I feel more accepted by her. I feel like
Mm.
it's a part of our relationship that doesn't have to hide anymore. And that's really important.
And I think for the partner receiving that, right, if you're maybe the less kinky one in the relationship, just recognizing that for your partner to share it is an act of vulnerability, right? They are showing you this part of them that might feel scary to show. And so my job is to be curious of, because there might be, maybe I can't fulfill that whole fantasy, but maybe I can this part. I'm good with this part. I can do that, right? And also to just a phrase I've used or we've used is like, all of you is welcome here, right? Like, so
Okay.
I feel honored if he is willing to share this thing with me that he doesn't share with most people. It feels like such an honor, right?
Mm.
That he trusts me with that he can open up to me. And I want to receive that with love, even if I can't deliver on it, right? I receive it with love.
It makes
Mm.
my body, every time I do it too, I get body tremors, and my body's starting to tremor right now. Because I've held in those things for so long, and they've been such a
Yeah.
source of shame and guilt.
Yeah.
So it helps release me to be more more available for Angela and connection.
I think what you found too is sometimes even just by speaking it, you don't even necessarily need to do the thing.
Or I didn't maybe even want to. That's the difference between a fantasy and a desire.
Yeah.
Right? Have you heard the phrase, don't yuck somebody's yum?
No, but I love it.
That's when I would also, just remind that everybody listening, no matter whatever your yum is or others, just don't yuck somebody else's yum.
Weirdo.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so weird. Yeah, I can imagine just like that's the last thing you want to hear, isn't it? Like if someone's like shamed almost for having a particular fantasy. Yeah.
And I think that I think removing, if you're the one receiving it or hearing it, right? Removing any feeling of pressure or obligation to do that thing, right? Because I think that's where sometimes it comes from. It's like, oh, you want this and I can't do that. Ugh. Right. And it's like this
I'm not
great
enough.
rejection. Yeah. And the job is more just to hear it, right? And listen and be curious and not to feel like you have to perform that thing. And then once the pressure's off, you might actually realize you could do that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It would actually be awesome.
Yeah.
A couple of questions I ask everyone on my podcast. What is the book that changed your life? Do you have any? Oops, it's frozen.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. You're
Okay. Do you have any books that you recommend or in this topic that have been influential in your career? Your camera's frozen. Oh yeah, okay, it's okay now.
Great. The Way of the Superior Man has helped me
Okay.
a lot for how to show up energetically in that space, how to hold that container. And and then on the female side, how to come as you are, Emily Nagoski's
Okay.
reading that from my perspective really helped me understand how to be married to this beautiful woman and how to understand her desire, and the brakes and gas was revolutionary for me.
Okay, and you?
Yeah, I would double click on Come As You Are. I think that's a great book for any couple where there's at least one female in the partnership, understanding female desire. And I do like Terry Real's work. He has some good books out there just helping, I think, couples, understand each other. So
Amazing. What's the quote or affirmation that you live by?
Let it be easy.
Okay. Is that possible?
Sometimes it's easier.
Maybe more of a hope. That's the hope.
Okay.
I think I often remind myself, it comes pretty easily to me, but that I generally think people are doing the best with what they've got.
Okay.
We're all coming to a situation with different tools, different resources, different experiences. And I do believe that most people are doing the best they can with what they've got. Right.
Amazing. So where can people find you?
The internets or the Sacred Valley of Peru, if you're local.
Okay. You're doing retreats down there. Are you making the most of your time there to do retreats there?
We are in planning mode for a retreat here.
Okay.
Yeah. But loveintentionally.co on Instagram. It's probably the best place to find us. You can also find us on our websites, loveintentionally.com.
Yeah, but the Instagram is one of the best places, and then we have a weekly, we call it a love letter.
Oh,
we
love
send
it.
out intimacy tips, tricks, and just tools that are helpful to us in the moment, and that are going to bring you to that connection you desire.
Yeah, and you can sign up for that on our website, loveintentionally.com, or just send us a message on Instagram, and we'll get you on the love letter list, so you get your weekly tips.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on here on the Orgasmic Lifestyle.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
The book I'm reading now is, I am doing one chapter a month on Think and Grow Rich with a friend. I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. And I am rereading this for the fourth time. And this is the book that changed my life. You may, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that I ask all of my guests, what is the book that changed your life? And for me, it is without a doubt, Think and Grow Rich. So with a friend, I am meeting once a month. We're going through the book chapter by chapter. And the first chapter about desire, I talked about with a friend a couple of weeks ago. My friend is very analytical, so I was going over my copy of the book, his copy of the book, and all my previous underlinings and finding new things, new messages hidden between the lines. And it's I think it got me back to, how much do you want what you want, and do you know what you want? That's something really to think about when you want to manifest a new life or some improvements in any area of your life. And it talks about going all in on something, which is something like, there's no room for failure. That can be very scary. It makes me think about people now who, let's say, have side hustles, and they want to get to a point where the side hustle starts making more money than the real hustle, and then they'll kind of like give up the real job and then go for the side hustle, the dream project. And I think that can feel like the most secure, safest thing to do if you want to change your life. But often going all in means there is no room for failure, a massive risk, of course, but you need to have the right mindset for it. And sometimes, for me, when I started my whole journey, which is going to be 16 years ago now, I didn't I kind of did have a side hustle, but then the main hustle kind of just died. I was in real estate, earning, just commission only, working Monday to Friday, making not a single euro. And then suddenly I was so burnt out, I actually sold 2 properties and then left my job and then went all in on my blog. And then, I had money to last me maybe for up to, about half a year or something. So at that point, I didn't have that much fear, because I could kind of, I would be able to get a different job if it had failed. But fortunately, once you start making the right decisions, lots of doors open to you that you weren't aware of, that you didn't know they would exist. So that's what it was like for me. Within 5 weeks of starting my blog and going all in full time, I actually got my first book deal offer, which was kind of pretty amazing, really. And many things started to come my way. And another thing that reminds in Desire is that in this chapter on Think and Grow Rich, he talks about the importance of imagination. And I think it's really interesting to value imagination and dreams, especially. It seems very unconcrete, if that's a word. But actually, that's where everything begins, is the power of your imagination and really visualizing your ideal outcomes and starting to believe it and being ready to receive. He also talks about his son who was born without ears, and he wanted his son to hear normally and not have this affliction being something that's going to work against him. He wanted it to be a big asset, which is a really interesting phenomenon, to turn something that seems to be, your weakness into your biggest strength. And I went to an event the other night, which was all about startup pitches. And the presenter talked about that, like all the things that it was actually called Unperfect or something. So all the things that you think are, your weaknesses could actually be your strengths. And, being born with some kind of, physical limitation like that can seem like, a bad deal or bad luck or whatever. But there's always another side to things. And he said that, people would just be nice to his son all the time. And that's a bit of an advantage when people see you and they kind of think, oh, I'm going to be nice to you, So, and also he became involved in some company with hearing aids and stuff like that. So I think it's interesting to think about, what are your weaknesses and how can you leverage your weaknesses to bring you the life that you want. And that's kind of similar to what I was talking about earlier. It's really about, accepting who you are in all your quirks, everything that makes you unique, and trying to leverage them in work and love. So desire. And you have to find out what you really want is something that sometimes can be tricky, but you have to really want it and be ready to receive it. And in this chapter as well, he talks about creating I think it's a 6-step, your kind of a 6-step statement of desire, which is interesting. And what you do is you write it out and you recite it every morning and every night to the point where it becomes really ingrained in your memory. And just before you go to bed and first thing in the morning is a very a good time to do some subconscious reprogramming to really get those messages into your brain. And in this statement of desire, you talk about what the amount of money you want, and when you want it by, and what you're going to give in return for the money. And that's really important when you are thinking about, value and money. It's like, what value are you going to be providing in exchange for this money? The date, the plan, and the statement, you're writing it out, and then you read it day and night out loud. So what I used to do, I used to write it out as well, to the point where I actually knew every single word, and it just became part of my, it was ingrained in my mind. So I'm really into these techniques of subconscious reprogramming, because it's incredible how much fear and limiting beliefs that we do have. The fear of success, and the fear of not feeling like we are enough. So that's something definitely to work on. So I think these books definitely help to get you to a place that you want to be and to thrive in life. So the next chapter I'm going to be talking about is faith. So I might talk about that in a few weeks once I've done the next session with my friend, because faith is also something you have to, have a lot of trust in the process to have faith that what you want is going to be yours one day. But I will go into that in more detail once I have revisited that chapter. So that is Think and Grow Rich, the chapter on desire. And in parallel, I'm also now, I've just translated my whole book, The Orgasmic Manifestation, which is going to be released soon. So I'm going to actually printed the whole manuscript out. And it's incredible that when you actually print something out, and you have a red pen in your hand, how many mistakes you see on paper that you don't see on the screen. And it's kind of scary, actually. So, and also reading it out loud, which really does help. So I've found many, many mistakes, and now I'm going to, I've corrected those mistakes, and I'm going to give it another read through this weekend, and then it's going to my proofreader, and then I can kind of forget about it for a while and just focus on what the cover's going to be and all of these other details that need to be worked on. So there's so much to do, actually. It's crazy, but I am very confident that it's going to be out in the spring, a global launch, and I will be talking about it on here a lot. So I hope that you will be buying my book, Orgasmic Manifestation. Now it's time to slow things down as we prepare for this episode's guided affirmations meditation. It's probably not a good idea to listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. Our love grows stronger every day. We nurture our relationship with love and care. We choose love and kindness every day. We communicate openly and honestly. We support and uplift each other. We trust and respect one another fully. We are grateful for our relationship. Our love grows stronger every day. We nurture our relationship with love and care. Together, we overcome any challenge. Our connection is deep and unbreakable. We find joy in each other's presence. We are a team united in love and purpose. We are grateful for our relationship. Our love grows stronger every day. We nurture our relationship with love and care. Our bond is filled with passion, trust, and understanding. We listen to each other with empathy and love. Our relationship is a safe space for growth and healing. We celebrate each other's successes and dreams. We are grateful for our relationship. Our love grows stronger every day. We nurture our relationship with love and care. Our intimacy deepens through trust and vulnerability. We honor each other's individuality and freedom. Together, we create a life filled with joy and harmony. Our love inspires us to be our best selves. We are grateful for our relationship. Are you looking to strengthen your pelvic floor in a fun and engaging way? Introducing PeriFit, the pelvic floor trainer that combines biofeedback with interactive video games. With PeriFit, you can track your progress and improve your pelvic health while playing games with your vagina on your smartphone. It's easy, effective, and more importantly, it's fun. For a limited time, you can get 25% off with the code Venus15 at checkout. Visit perifit.co today and take control of your pelvic health with PeriFit. That's perifit.co and use the code Venus15 for 25% off. The link is also in the show notes below. Strengthen, play, and thrive with PeriFit. Disclaimer: consult your healthcare provider before starting any new fitness program. To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/venusohara. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.